Welcome to the Beau Show. At the National Religious Broadcasters Convention, I sat down with a number of Christian communicators who all communicate in different ways using their faith. Allen West was a former commanding officer in the Army and a member of Congress, and we talked about how faith has guided him in life, as well as his personal views on our recent military operations. Here's Allen West. Colonel Allen West, it's so great to see you again.
Good to be with Beau.
The volunteer state of Tennessee.
Absolutely.
Now, you're in Texas now. UT means one thing there. It means something quite different to you and to Peyton Manning and to volunteer fans.
Well, you know, I always tell the folks out in Texas that there wouldn't be a Texas if it weren't for Tennessee volunteers. So I'm a proud graduate, 1983 of the University of Tennessee. And
you got your orange tie on.
Got my orange tie on because we're here in Nashville.
That's right. Well, Colonel, you have so much military experience and as a commanding officer in the Army. And I would like to know just your assessment of how the Biden administration is handling Russia-Ukraine right now.
Well, I think that when you look at a series of events, you know, the Biden administration is focused on the critical race theory, the cultural Marxism, and all of that. They're not focusing on the war-fighting capability. When you also look at what happened in Afghanistan as well, and then the fact that we have undermined our own oil and gas exploration and industry, we were energy independent. Now we're going to Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, who else? To get Venezuela, to get our resources. So all of these has lent to an understanding that this is a weak point for America. And if you remember, it was during the Obama-Biden administration when we showed that weakness once before, and Vladimir Putin overran Crimea and he overran eastern Ukraine. So now he sees this as his opportunity to take Ukraine in total.
And it seems that the difference in a Trump presidency versus a Biden presidency is starkly different.
Absolutely.
And how Putin is behaving, how President Xi is behaving too.
The Trump presidency was based upon the Reagan principle of peace through strength. And you presented a credible military deterrent. And he rebuilt our military, not just the articles of war and the capability, but he rebuilt the spirit of the warrior also during the Trump administration.
Well, I believe it was Senator Cruz who at the State of the Union told Secretary Blinken, let Texas do its thing, let the oil reserves from Texas flow. Why is this seemingly very simple thing evading the Biden administration and Secretary Blinken?
Because the Biden administration is in total is being held captive to the progressive socialist left and their Green New Deal agenda. And so they're happy to see the gasoline prices where it is in the United States of America right now. They don't see any shame in going to Venezuela or Iran or Saudi Arabia when all they can do is just open up our own oil and gas industry. And we're the Saudi Arabia of natural gas. But yet you saw the Biden administration support the Nord Stream 2 pipeline going into Germany, going into Eastern Europe, instead of supporting our own capability.
So you believe that was by design?
It's totally by design. Everything that the Biden administration is doing is purposeful and intentional. When you look at what is happening on our border, it's purposeful and it's intentional. And that's why this is, without a doubt, one of the most unconstitutional administrations that we've seen in quite some time.
Well, you know, since the pandemic started in 2020, we saw a lot of people migrate to states like Texas, Tennessee, where I am now in Florida, where you've been before. Do you think that's the result of just sensible conservative policies from those types of governments?
Yeah, absolutely. People are voting with their feet and with their wallets because they want to go to a place where they can have a sense of liberty and freedom. They don't want to be in these shut down states. And when you look at the performance of most red states, it's far exceeding what the blue states have done. But even still, I mean, we've got problems in Texas. We still are under an emergency declaration from 2 years ago that should have been lifted. We still have small businesses that were shut down. We still have vaccine mandates in Texas. So we need to make sure that we have strong governors. And, you know, the governor of Texas should call the Biden administration and say, look, you cannot shut down an entire industry by an executive order. Show me in the Constitution where you have that enumerated power. And, you know, Governor Abbott should say, we're going to produce, we're going to consume, we're going to export those resources, and we're going to protect that industry in the state of Texas.
A lot of Americans didn't think that Marxism could actually come here. But we've seen it infect academia, school boards, even sometimes churches. How, Alan, do you think such an insidious philosophy has slowly been able to infect so many institutions in our country?
Well, it comes to 2 Timothy chapter 4, when we have so many of these pastors that are going out there and tickling people's ears. They're preaching these false doctrines instead of preaching the Word of God. And so Marxism is always going to try to seep into our established institutions, academia, our religious institutions, and our political institutions, and our media institutions, which is, again, why it's so important that we have an NRB that gets that counter message out there. So we are fighting a cultural Marxism. And when you think about when Terry McAuliffe said in the debate in Virginia that parents don't have a right to decide what their children are being taught, that's an affront to us here in America, but we've got to get back to the basics. And when you read the Constitution, the Declaration, our inalienable rights don't come from the government. They don't come from man. They come from a creator God. And we've got to get that reestablished.
What percentage would you say the Democratic Party is truly sensible at this particular moment in time? That's non-Marxist. Because there is a faction, right?
Yeah.
There have to be some that reject that. You think it's half and half?
No, I think that, probably 35, maybe 40% are, what we used to call the old blue dog Democrats, the conservative Democrats. And I think that that's what's out there, and they're looking for a home. And I think that what we have to have is a strong Christian constitutional conservative movement that says, here's your home.
Well, Colonel, you've run for governor of Texas. You've been the chairman of the Texas GOP. What's next for you?
Well, to be here in a venue like this and to continue to talk about our Christian constitutional conservative values and principles, which is the bedrock of the United States of America. So just continue to get that message out there.
Colonel, go Vols.
Go Big Orange.
And thank you for your leadership and your continued service to this country. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
I also spoke with Keith Stubbs, who created Dry Bar Comedy, a clean version of comedy that always had a demand, but perhaps few knew that there was such a supply. Stubbs has been able to assemble a number of comedians who don't need profanity to provide humor. We talked about the state of comedy today and why Hollywood has grossly overlooked this niche. Here's Keith Stubbs. We're here at the 2022 National Religious Broadcasters Conference in, where are we?
We're in Nashville, Tennessee.
Of course, and I'm from Memphis, so it's great to be back in my home state. And I'm joined by Keith Stubbs of Dry Bar Comedy. Thanks so much for being here.
I'm glad to be here, man.
Well, we're going to have some fun today, okay?
Yes, we
I want
are.
to really get down to the nitty-gritty of comedy. You've started Dry Bar Comedy, and I want to know about the origins of that and the evolution to where it is right now.
Well, about 5 years ago, Neil and Jeffrey Harmon, they saw a void, an opportunity to present clean, funny for everyone comedy. And there truly is a void in this business, in show business. I've been a comedian since 1991, so and I started in LA, so I've seen a lot, experienced a lot, and know a lot of people, but there truly is a void of that type of comedy. So we, after seeing Jim Gaffigan in concert, selling out, Brian Regan, these guys that sell thousands of tickets, there's got to be more of a market out there for clean, family-friendly comedy. And so we decided to start shooting in our studio stand-up comedians. They asked me to start booking the comedians since I knew a lot of the people, and we started filming comedy specials, releasing them, and it caught fire. A market that most people thought didn't exist. And I can tell you, industry people, because I know all the agents, I know all the industry people because I've been in it for a long time, they did not expect at all.
It was a blind spot for them.
Total blind spot. They thought, matter of fact, when we first started, I approached them, I said, because you have to go through the agents, as you know.
Of course. Hey,
how about so-and-so? It'd be perfect for Dry Bar. They're like, what? Who's going to watch that? Why would someone watch that? And of course, we were able to prove them wrong, thankfully, and grown from there.
Well, let's talk about the genre of comedy. You know, you used to have, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, George Carlin, and some were certainly filthier than others. But it was unabashed and it was unfiltered. How has that transitioned into the politically correct direction of today?
Well, I still think that's out there. I think the comics that aren't politically correct, they're still out there, but you see them on the internet now. A lot of those, especially if they go a certain way politically, you will not see them on mainstream TV. It's not going to happen.
Excommunicated.
Absolutely. They will shut you right out. But because of the internet, and there's a good side and there's a bad side to everything, because of the internet, there's opportunities for comedians that are on the cleaner side or have maybe a different point of view to be heard and seen and get those clicks.
Well, Kevin Hart, let's talk about him because he's been someone that I never thought would be canceled, so to speak. And in many ways, he hasn't been. He still has a very active career. But the Oscars sure pressured him to step down. Does he have Teflon?
I think he's very likable. I think he handled it very well. He didn't fold when all that went down.
He doubled down.
Yeah, he sure did. He said, no, I've already apologized. I felt bad. And look, how about forgiveness? There should be forgiveness in this world, and there is very little forgiveness, which is shocking to me because you would think that that would be better received. Someone saying, you know what, I messed up. Because I can tell you, as a comic, I've said things on stage, done things, we've all done things that maybe we regret or wish we hadn't done or wish we hadn't said, but hopefully there would be a certain amount of forgiveness. But Kevin Hart said, no, I've apologized. I'm not going to continually apologize. I said I'm sorry. I said I was wrong. It didn't come out the way I thought it was going to come out. And he said, I'm done talking about it. And I think he played it well, but he's so likable. He's so funny, so talented. I think that some people can do that and still get away with it, and other comics or other people, they're not going to get that grace.
Well, it's a shame to me because the Oscars lost a very talented host.
Very funny.
And that was the beginning of them going hostless, which was kind of a mistake too. There was no one to guide people through it like Billy Crystal and people like that made the Oscars fun to watch. And now we know that their ratings are so in the toilet, nobody even cares anymore.
Well, no one's watching most of the movies that are even coming out. The movies that get the awards are movies that most people don't even watch.
Right.
The movies that people do go see, which may be a Marvel movie or whatever, those usually are shunned.
I think humor is so important because it tells us the truth. At the end of the day, it tells us something true. And I told you I've written operatic parodies about Joe Biden and about Chris and Andrew Cuomo. To me, they're funny because I find the material funny. There's a lot to make fun of there. I would love for Lorne Michaels to see that, but I guess it would go unheeded. It wouldn't even be recognized.
If they do anything on like Cuomo, they'll have maybe Pete Davidson do it.
Yeah.
It is gentle.
It
is just
light.
It is very soft. Don't want to hurt too many feelings.
Right.
Even though it's great opportunity and it's so absurd what's happened.
Right.
But they'll maybe broach it, but that's as far as they'll go.
But they whiff, it sounds like.
Yep.
So what is it, Keith, about comedy that makes us feel both great and uncomfortable at the same time?
I think it's the realization of the relatability of it. I think that sometimes someone will tell a joke and go, "Oh man, that's me. I do that." So there's an uncomfortableness. I have several comedians. Totally. I have friends that talk about their dad and what their dad does when they watch certain news programs. I'm like, oh man, that's me. And it made me uncomfortable because I'm like, wow, it was a mirror up to me. But it's so funny. But I'm so thin-skinned. And comedy, none of it, I've seen so much that it doesn't really bother me. But I also think a great joke, comics love to see another comic that's just great and go, man, why didn't I think of that?
Right.
Why didn't that?
I wish that'd been
it was
my
right
joke.
there. I saw it, and what did I do? I missed.
Well, Keith, tell us where we can go to see some of the great comics on Dry Bar Comedy.
First of all, we have over 500 comedians that have shot specials, and we're
Wow.
season 10. We're going to start taping next month, so we have 30 more comedians. Dry Bar Comedy Plus is our app. That's a great place to go. We have a full library of all our comedy specials on it, and we're also venturing out into other areas in the comedy world. I mean, we're going at it. This is legit. What we're doing right now isn't just stand-up comedy, but it's going to be other forms of comedy. We're going to be doing a Last Comic Standing type competition that's going to be sponsored by Dry Bar. Also, we have a couple sketch comedy shows and also sitcoms. So we're not done yet. We're still rolling. We're still going to continue to provide the content. If you look on Facebook, if you look on YouTube, punch in Dry Bar Comedy, you'll see it. Great content at your fingertips.
Looks like the sky's the limit for you.
I think it is.
Well, Keith, thanks so much for joining me, and congratulations on all the success of Dry Bar Comedy.
Okay, thank you.
Keep at it.
All right, man. Thanks,
you.
Man. Appreciate it.
Finally, you may remember the whole fallout with GoFundMe over the Canadian truckers convoy, in which the Canadian government stepped in to shut down funding. At the center of this was GiveSendGo, a Christian crowdfunding platform that picked up where GoFundMe had independently decided to play politics and pick sides to shut down its own platform for the truckers. Heather Wilson talked about the mission of GiveSendGo and where things stand now as they speak to Canadian Parliament. We're at the National Religious Broadcasters Conference 2022, and I'm joined by Heather Wilson from GiveSendGo. How are you, Heather?
I'm doing well.
Heather, tell me about the origins of GiveSendGo. I always like to know the why something is created. Please tell me about it.
Sure. So GiveSendGo was started by my brother and I about 8 years ago. We are from a really large family. There's 12 siblings in my family, and we were sitting around. GoFundMe had become a thing. We're starting to see it more and more on social media, and we thought, what a great idea. Like people coming together to raise money to make a difference in people's needs. And we're like, are there any Christian organizations that do this? We didn't find any, and we thought, let's start one where we not only help people with their financial, like allowing people to raise money for financial needs, but where we can also share the hope that meets way bigger than any financial needs they'll ever have. And so GiveSendGo was born, and we started walking that out, and 8 years later, the platform for missions trips and adoptions and all those great things, it still exists, but we've been thrown into a little bit different spotlight than we expected.
Now let's really get into something you're in the middle of right now, because this is a big deal. GoFundMe internally decided to shut down all the donations that were coming in for the Canadian Truckers Convoy, I think it was the Freedom Convoy. And so a lot of them came to you. They came to GiveSendGo. They started raising money. I think you said it was maybe $2 million early on?
Yeah, $2 million in the first 24 hours. They've hit about $9 to 10 million.
Okay. Then you ran into some problems because the Canadian government got involved. Parliament got involved. They wanted to shut it down too. Walk me through that evolution of what happened and where you stand now.
Sure. So it starts with GoFundMe. It starts with a campaign coming onto GiveSendGo called Adopt a Trucker, where somebody was saying, hey, you can give and adopt a trucker and give toward them trucking across Canada to this protest. That guy he started raising money. He started receiving the money on GiveSendGo. Their friend started a campaign on GoFundMe. Start walking out, they raise $8 million. GoFundMe internally says, oh, wait, what are you going to use this money for? And they wait long enough to eventually say, it's not part of our terms of service. So what we're going to do is we're going to reroute the money to other charities of the choice unless you ask for a refund. People were up in arms, like, no, we don't want you to reroute this money. It needs to go where we wanted it to go. So we're not going to ask for a refund. We're going to dispute it with our bank, which will cause $15 chargebacks to GoFundMe.
Right.
So immediately GoFundMe saw this as a negative, I'm assuming, and they decided they would refund all the money on that came in. So these truckers, this convoy, this organization that started they just wanted to provide humanitarian help to the truckers who are on the ground in Ottawa. They came over to GiveSendGo and said, okay, our friend is raising money. He's already gotten a couple $100,000. We're going to go here. We allow them to raise money. Immediately, within the first 24 hours, we had 10 million DDoS attacks on our site. It took our site down. Every time I went on the site, there was a 404 page, an error page. We're bringing in teams of people to help us figure out, stop these attacks. People are donating. So half the world is trying to donate, and half the world is trying to take us down.
Wow.
And so the next morning, and I like to say, when we woke up, but we didn't wake up because we were up all night trying to figure this out, we look, and the campaign had raised $2 million in 24 hours with the site not even being up most of the time when we checked. And I said, wow, God, this is a you thing. Because there's no way a site that is having so many attacks on it should be able to, I can't even
right.
get on. Like I would try to get on and say,
yeah.
I can't even get into the back end where I need to get on.
Yeah.
And there's just errors. And so we allowed this to go on, and about a week later, we hear through media and social media news that the Canadian government is issuing a statement that they're freezing all the funds for the convoy. We go, oh, well, that's news to us. We haven't heard anything. They don't tell us why. But we're a U.S.-based country, a U.S.-based company, and the money is in a U.S.-based bank account. They don't have any jurisdiction over us.
Right.
We actually said, you're not the boss of us. And, I don't think they like that very much. And so what they were like, we need to do something. This company is not just bending to our will. We're going to invoke the Emergency Act, where we're going to freeze any funds coming into this country. People will be charged with a crime if they receive money from these two campaigns. They are like, you can't get a Visa gift card from them, unless you're doing something illegally. Well, we don't want to cross an illegal boundary, right? And so we looked at all the different options of getting the funds to the truckers.
As cleverly as you could.
As clever, and we had some great people writing in, offering all different ways.
And so what was the end result? Well, I know, first of all, you did tell me that you had a hacker came in and was trying to dox all the donors too, as well, correct?
Yes.
Which then could be exposed to the Canadian government.
Yeah, so the Canadian government said we're going to freeze this money, and if you've given, we're going to be looking into you. And then on Super Bowl Sunday evening, which if there's any good thing about a breach, which there never is, was that it happened during Super Bowl. So there wasn't a million people on our site because the Super Bowl was happening. So thank you, God, for allowing the Super Bowl halftime show to be on, right?
Right.